If they are not pressured into being nocturnal, you're going to have them standing around for 10, 15, 20 minutes, maybe even up to an hour, just standing around your bait pile, just eating. And you don't want that. That's not a good thing. How they survive to maturity. And eating on bait piles in daylight hours, this is not how they've done that. See it as a focal point for does, who will then bring in the bucks. I'm hiking out right now to an area that I've been hunting for a very long time. And I'm going out here to pick up a couple of SD cards, and while I'm here, throw some corn out. And it got me thinking that I could talk about baiting and how effective or ineffective it can be. So, after 10 years of doing this, 10 years of, when I first began throwing corn every single time I went and hunted, to now almost never throwing corn, and I only do it in very specific areas, I found that baiting can really pressure deer. It'll turn them nocturnal very fast. It turns the area that you're baiting into a destination, especially if you're bringing in a lot of bait. They don't want to go and stand around in an area and eat for hours on end. So, at least they will, but they won't want to do that without the cover of darkness. So they wait till dark, then they go out there. So, I've mostly quit using corn. I've mostly quit using baits for that reason. Now, the spot that I'm going to is very different. I have very safe wind conditions. And I think that that is the primary thing to using bait, is making sure that your hunting location is always upwind of where the deer are going to go. I'm right on a ridge, and this ridge dumps off into water. So there's no way that anything is going to get downwind of me on a normal south wind. I just simply don't hunt it on any other wind. So that is going to be your primary use, or rule, is to set it up where your wind is always safe. You never want your wind ever to even potentially swirl towards them. That brings up another point. If you throw out a bunch of bait, you're going to have the deer standing around. If they are not pressured into being nocturnal, you're going to have them standing around for multiple minutes, 10, 15, 20 minutes, maybe even up to an hour, just standing around, milling around in this area, around your bait pile, just eating. And you don't want that. That's not a good thing, because that's providing more time for them to spot you, smell you, hear you, anything. So you want to minimize your bait pile. Make sure that it is small enough where they don't stand around and eat it for an extended amount of time, but big enough that they want to come around and check it. And you're going to want to gauge that by your deer herd. How many are in the population around you? Again, I rarely use baits, but whenever I do, I'm putting it in a very select area, very safe winds, and making sure that it's on a trail that does will use. I'm wanting to attract does with the bait. That's essentially what it is for. I want them to come in, mill around for maybe a minute, and then get out of there. That way, they're not smelling me. There's no risk of wind swirling around and them catching it and blowing everything out. I want them to just come through. What that can do is provide scent on the ground, doe attraction, natural, for bucks cruising, hopefully in the rut, bucks cruising in behind them and just scent checking the trails. And I have found that to be far more effective than just having a massive pile setting out that, for one, can spook them, two, makes them nocturnal, and three, gets you caught more than likely. So, yeah, don't just randomly scatter your bait all around your stand and just indiscriminately throwing it everywhere, because you don't know where that corn's landing or whatever. Just pay attention to it. Keep it in a very thoughtful, specific location. Also, do not see it as though you're trying to bait bucks into the food source. You're not baiting in bucks, you're baiting in does who will then bring in the bucks behind them. Now there are rare occasions, I've done it before, where I've had bucks just come running into a bait pile and just munch on it, give me a perfect shot on them. That can happen, but don't expect it to happen and don't utilize this for that. It's just not going to be nearly successful, and the odds of that are so much lower. So just see it as a focal point for does who will then bring in the bucks. If you are a meat hunter and just interested in shooting does just to fill the freezer, then that's totally different. Same things won't really apply. This video won't really be all that useful because you can just kind of indiscriminately throw bait on the ground and have does walk up to it and give you a perfect shot. And you can have them on a very easy pattern to follow. Those mature bucks, though, are going to be different. They're a lot more complex, a lot more thoughtful creatures. And you just got to be conscientious of how spooky they are and how they survive to maturity. And eating on bait piles in daylight hours, this is not how they've done that. So I'm going to get up on this ridge. I will show you how I have mine set up and what I do. It's been very successful before. Okay, so I threw out all that corn, and what I always do is I'll throw it into this cedar tree. It's thick in there. After a couple of times me coming out here and throwing corn, they'll be used to it. At first, they'll probably hesitate to go all the way into there and eat all that, but what that does is gives me even more of a cover being in my tree just 25 yards that way. You know, if I happen to come up here and they're over here milling around, they might have their heads stuck all the way inside that cedar, and that will help screen me. So if you have brush in your area, if you're gonna try to bait a spot, that could be a strategy that you could use. Just throw it inside the brush, and if they're comfortable with it, they may go ahead and stick their head in there and eliminate their visibility to where you're hunting. So the strategy in this spot is there's a bedding area over there. A lot of does just hang out over there through the day, and there's pastures out beyond here. And what happens is in the mornings, the does will file out from that bedding area and come through and check here for corn on their way over down off the ridge when they're on their way to get water. And my goal is just to have those does come through, check it out, grab a couple of bites of corn to eat. You know, they're usually pretty full anyway from doing whatever it is they're doing out in the pastures all night. So they just munch a little bit and then go down to get water. So I don't want them to stay, and I'm not even trying to attract bucks with this. I just want bucks to cut through these does trails, seeing if anybody's in heat. And they don't need to stop and eat. You know, they can just keep on going through, and I can stop them in order to get a shot on them. So I figured I'd go ahead and show what it looks like from my tree. Climbed up here, and I'll just kind of point out how it goes here. Ooh, this is my view. And that bedding area is out there. Deer typically filter in through here. And over on this side, they'll come in. And straight in front of me is south. You'll be prevailing south winds here, so It's very easy. I can climb up the ridge behind me and get straight up into this tree and not bust out anything. So they'll come in and stick their heads into that cedar tree, try to grab corn, wander around front and back for about 2 minutes max. And then they'll move out this way and go down to get water. So just kind of wrapping things up here, just go over the points just to sum it up. And this is 10 years of bringing out thousands of pounds of corn and grain out into the woods to very little success, no success at all with any mature bucks. Whenever I quit baiting was whenever I was actually able to start getting good encounters and shooting at good age class bucks. So first point is just always, if you're going to bait, if you want to do it, make sure that you've got the right situation like this, where you've got foolproof wind, that you're not going to have near walking in all directions to come check out your bait pile. Point number 2 is don't expect bucks to come to a bait pile. You're not going to have a 4 or 5 year old buck just walk up and eat on a grain pile. I mean, that might happen. It's just luck of the draw, as always, but don't count on it. It's a pile of bait for does, and ultimately does are your bait. You want does in your area, and you want them to be relaxed. So aim for that. Make those your priorities when it comes to baiting. And don't just make huge piles out there where they're milling around eating. That's going to be point number 3. You don't want them sitting there for half an hour looking up in the trees and potentially finding you or smelling you. So yeah, hopefully this will help you with your hunt this fall, whether you decide to bait or not. Save some money if you can. Just go at it, hunt them in their natural state. It's a lot more fun anyways. Yeah, hopefully it helps. Thanks for watching.